Sure, you're not supposed to judge a book by its cover, but it's honestly hard to sometimes in MMA. In this sport, we get our fair share of larger-than-life figures. Whether an athlete is built like a Greek god, has a face that bears the scars of a life of fistfights and training, or just, you know, some chemo-looking dude that you could build in career mode in UFC 4.
What is that? What the fuck is that?
But then of course, there are the outliers. The normal looking person who just happens to be a complete master of fighting. Make no mistake, they may not look the part, but they will fuck you up. I'm Tom from MMA On Point, and this is 10 least intimidating fighters in MMA history. Number 10, Junior Albini. What a fighter wears to the cage has certainly added to the appeal of some fighters. Chuck Liddell's Icicle Trunks, Tito Ortiz's Flames, or, you know, Anderson Silva's Bruce Lee inspired black and yellow. Of course, the blanket approach to outfitting since the Reebok deal took effect may have dulled some of the individual flair, but some athletes have found a way to make it their own. You know, people like Cerrone can sneak pieces of his old Muay Thai trunks onto his clothes. Brock Lesnar can just, you know, suddenly decide that he wants to represent Canada. And Junior Albini can wear a Reebok branded diaper. The man known as Baby wasn't exactly trying to lean into his nickname for the comical, infamous look he sported for his fight against Andrei Arlovski at UFC Fight Night 120, as Albini says that he had gained some weight since his previous fight, but the UFC was unaware of this and gave him the same size trunks. As a man who was once a 350-pound teenager, Albini's large legs became a problem in the small clothes, and he had to roll the legs up to stay comfortable and prevent his mobility being impaired. Yep, that classic one. While this was a one-time incident, the Baby moniker and Pampers look are hard to separate. Number 9, Sam Alvey. The walk to the cage. Imagine the hardest of hardcore music, bloodthirsty fans screaming at the top of their lungs, and weeks of preparation for unarmed combat by a certified knockout artist. And of course, a huge cheesy grin. Nothing is wrong with your imagination, you're just thinking about good old smiling Sam Alvey, and the song is probably a little softer. When telling the origin story behind one of the most appropriate nicknames in MMA history, Alvey can't help but flash those pearly whites and talk about his love of fighting, unable to contain his excitement about the brutality that awaits. He has to unleash that beam on everyone watching. Cornered in part by his wife Brittany, who also happens to be a winner of the reality show America's Next Top Model, not bad Sam, and one of his training partners at Team Quest, the well-traveled vet has even shaved smiley faces into his hair before fights. Describing himself as not the most intimidating looking fighter, he has openly pondered whether or not his opponents tend to underestimate his abilities. Even if his cheerful attitude is partly gamesmanship, it would be wise to exercise caution against a man who has wins over former champions Nate Marquardt and Rashad Evans. Number 8, Luke Kumo. When we first met Luke Kumo, he was pointing his chi north towards the flow of the earth with the aid of a compass after placing his mattress on the floor at the start of the second season of Tough. Just like the other fighters in the house, we were confused and wondering where he came from, but as he showed with his 5-minute wall sit, there was more to him than a pair of glasses and strange sleeping habits. Still, he was picked last to represent the welterweights on Team Hughes, but much to the surprise of everyone involved, Kumo made it to the finals, dropping a unanimous decision to eventual title challenger Joe Stevenson, finishing his career with a 6-6 record, 1 fight the night bonus, and urine therapy.
Sterile, and I like the taste. Okay.
The Serra-Longo pupil's bizarre story unfortunately extended far beyond his time in the octagon. Kumo would later be on the run following a domestic dispute with his ex-wife. While still wanted by the authorities, he actually still posted strange Instagram posts and YouTube videos. The marijuana advocate has since been open about the brain trauma stemming from his career. Number 7, Ryan Hall. If you saw Ryan Hall walking down the street, you probably wouldn't think he was such a feared man in mixed martial arts. But the man who can easily be mistaken for your friendly local accountant managed to win the 22nd season of The Ultimate Fighter after already earning an impressive collection of medals as a world-class submission grappler. The former aspiring electrical engineer has developed somewhat of a cult following for his understated demeanor and deceptively dangerous style of fighting. The odd blend of karate-style kicks, unorthodox takedowns, and leg locks has made him, according to long-term friends and coach Kenny Florian, one of the most avoided men in the sport. Considering the long gaps in between bouts since winning TUF and now, it doesn't seem that unreasonable. Hall even took to the airwaves to claim requests to fight everyone ranked from 6 to 12 at featherweight had been denied, going as far to personally indict Moicano and Josh Emmett for directly turning him down.
It's been a little bit of a struggle to find an opponent. You know, I've been directly turned down or been told that they're unavailable.
Admitting that between his worldview, approach to the sport, and mild level of Tourette syndrome make him feel as though he doesn't fit among other fighters, Hall certainly stands out. But just in case you need a reminder, check out that sick cauliflower ear. Number 6, John Dodson. If a man standing 5'3" and weighing anywhere between 120 and 135 pounds walked in the room, I doubt most would feel any sense of danger or intimidation. Now, if this man's first instinct was to constantly laugh and smile, you'd probably be even less apprehensive. But if that man was John Dodson, that compact frame and big smile would contain a particularly potent level of destructive violence. Even though he was the smallest man on the show next to Louis Gaudino, whose green hair and tattoos scream that he belongs in a subculture like prize fighting, Dodson managed to win TUF 14 at bantamweight, knocking out 3 of his 4 opponents in the tournament, including eventual champion TJ Dillashaw. In fact, the 2-time title challenger has finished nearly 60% of his professional fights, which doesn't include 2 of his TUF wins, by the way. From his grinning kung fu pose at weigh-ins and his traditional dancing walkout, it's understandable for an opponent to momentarily let their guard down. And after a 16-year career complete with a horrible lingering knee injury, it was easy for many to write him off heading into his battle against surging contender Nathaniel Wood. But of course, the magician reminded us all that he's not to be messed with by scoring that TKO in the final round. Number 5, Roxanne Modafferi. There are nice people, and then there's Roxanne Modafferi. By all accounts, Roxanne is nothing but kind and pleasant. It comes across in her interviews as she seems to have a friendly disposition that betrays her professional life as a cage fighter. While she has recently devoted a lot more of her efforts towards strength and conditioning, her career has largely been reliant on a dogged spirit and her skills as a lifelong martial artist, and not athleticism, as she's normally outmatched in that department. Despite typically being the less physically gifted underdog in a sport based on damaging someone as much as possible, Modafferi still somehow finds a way to be nice. When Macy Barber, who was a -1,000 favorite at UFC 246, suffered a knee injury mid-fight, Modafferi elected not to exploit the weakness on the feet and won the fight primarily on the ground to prevent further injury. And with all due respect to Angela Hill, Modafferi is also one of the more, dedicated nerds in the sport, as she consistently pays homage to anime and comic books in training and at weigh-ins. Believe it or not, the happy warrior and self-proclaimed slow starter has picked up wins over notable names like Andrea Lee, Marlos Kunin, and Vanessa Porter, and has challenged for titles in the UFC, Strikeforce, and Invicta. Number 4, Dan Kelly. The middleweight division is filled with physical specimens that look like they were carved out of stone. And then there's Dan Kelly. And it's easy to mistake Kelly for a middle-aged man who has a minivan full of kids and a 9-to-5 job as a human resources manager. But in reality, Kelly is probably the most dangerous man at the PTA meeting, aside from, Daniel Cormier. The man known to some as Dad Bod Catterall is a well-accomplished judoka with a 4th degree black belt and 4 trips to the Olympics representing Australia to his credit. At 37 years old, he entered the UFC with an undefeated record and quickly made an impression with a first-round submission in his promotional debut. And even with an advanced age compared to his peers and greying hair, he came dangerously close to being considered a real contender at 185 pounds after picking up wins against Rashad Evans and Antonio Carlos Jr. While his momentum did come to a screeching halt following 3 back-to-back losses before what essentially amounted to a forced retirement, Kelly inspired quite a few dietarily challenged gentlemen and continues to be a guiding force in the oceanic MMA scene. Number 3, Do Ho Choi. It's hard to mention Do Ho Choi and not mention that he looks like a junior high school yearbook photo. But the appearance of innocence and prepubescent charm will likely fade fast upon feeling a hard right cross from the Korean Superboy. But you probably wouldn't feel it at all because you'd be completely unconscious. Choi quickly made a name for himself by starting his UFC career with 3 consecutive first-round knockouts, claiming the chins of respected vets like Sam Cecilia and Thiago Tavares. And just when the adrenaline rush of his quick finish of Tavares started wearing down, Choi gave one of the most polite callouts of featherweight mainstay Cub Swanson. And when his wish was granted at UFC 206, Choi returned to the violence that seems to come naturally to the babyface prospect, as in one of the most entertaining fights in the promotion's history, Swanson and Choi battered each other non-stop for the entirety of their 3-round meeting. While he came up short that evening and hasn't seen the win column since, it'll be impossible not to get excited the next time we hear the Superman theme song in the UFC arena. Number 2, Chase Hooper. The name Teenage Dream probably brings up images of boy bands and kid actors that can be found on posters in your little sister's bedroom. It's highly unlikely your first thought was an up-and-coming MMA fighter with a dangerous jiu-jitsu game and the marketing machine of the UFC behind him, but Chase Hooper somehow manages to subvert our expectations. First finding his way on our radar via the Contender Series, the then 18-year-old looked more like Dustin from Stranger Things than someone who could land a coveted developmental deal after an improbable comeback win. In his time under the watchful eye of Uncle Dana, he has wisely used his youthful charm to endear himself to fans. This has included claiming the similarly curly-haired Ben Askren as his father and doubling down by confronting Jorge Masvidal about that record-setting flying knee KO.
Why'd you do that to my dad?
Who's that?
My father is Ben Askren. Shout out.
With his looks and personality, Hooper has acknowledged it wouldn't be genuine to play the stereotypical tough and scary fighter, so the self-proclaimed nerdy weird kid has instead embraced the other side of the fence. And number 1, Cody McKenzie. If you happen to wander into a random bar in Alaska and get into it with a random long-haired man with an indistinct build and a V for Vendetta mustache, just apologize to be on the safe side. Sure, he could be some sort of failed rock musician who frequents the establishment for karaoke night reliving his high school band glory days, or he could be former UFC fighter Cody McKenzie. Upon first sight during season 12 of The Ultimate Fighter, it was clear that McKenzie wasn't like anyone else there, especially when standing beside fighters like Michael Johnson, Alex Caceres, and Jonathan Brookins. By his own admission, McKenzie spent a good portion of his career without any guidance as far as nutrition and cardio was concerned. And despite being at a severe athletic disadvantage and going 3-4 in the UFC, after an incredible 11-0 run of first-round victories, his patented modified guillotine choke led him to being one of the most memorable fighters on the roster. Upon leaving the promotion, his career stalled out, and following a string of losses and 2 bizarre incidents involving ped testing, McKenzie retired citing a lack of money and the inability to keep up with the increasing level of athleticism in the sport. But, word of advice, if that random guy at the bar in Alaska happens to be wearing basketball shorts with the tag still on them, then you're probably in trouble.
They just made the difficulty too hard.
Whoa! I just shot him out of the cage! Shot him out of the cage! Someone clip that! I shot him out of the cage with an uppercut! Someone clip that!
John Jones is dead.
I just shot him out of the cage!
That's a Tommy clip. Tommy can...
Yeah! Woo!
Hey, what's up guys? Jason here, just to let you know about our Twitch channel and our streaming schedule. We do that Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and we've also added Sundays to our schedule now. Just check our schedule at twitch.tv/MMAonPoint for more details, and then also check out our Discord. See you guys on the next stream.
Thanks so much to Anthony Walker for writing this list. You can go follow him at AntWalkerMMA. And thanks so much to Max Randall for editing it. You can follow him at Max_Randall. Also, thanks so much to the man Ben Rosette, composer of the intro music. Please go check out his music by clicking the link in the description below and catch the latest updates on his Instagram and Twitter page at Ben Rosette. Thanks for watching that video. Please do like and subscribe. We upload 3 jaw-droppingly juicy MMA videos a week to get your teeth into, and let us know your thoughts in the comments. Make sure to follow us at OnPointMMA and Tom A. Ransom on Twitter, and you make sure you have a great day.